Hi, everyone, and welcome to In Deep Geek Live. This is, I should probably say welcome back if you are normally here for the live streams. And this is obviously my first time back after a little break. I went away for a week. I went to Wales, which is beautiful. If you love ancient castles, sort of Neolithic burial chambers, that kind of stuff, it is an amazing place. So I'm back. I'm recharged. I just needed to take a little bit of time off. It's been quite the start of the year, hasn't it? First half of the year. Recharge my batteries, and I'm now back and raring to go. And today we are looking at the Wildlings, or the Free Folk, as they call themselves. This is sort of part of my sort of ongoing series looking at some of the great houses of Westeros. They're obviously not a house, they're quite a disparate group. But a lot of people have been asking me about the Wildlings and could I do something about the Wildlings. I wasn't really sure where to put it in, so I thought I'll just start up here. This was one of the things that my patrons voted for at a $10 plus level of Patreon. Then you get to vote every now and then on what I should be covering, and I gave them a couple of options and they decided to go for the Wildlings. So here we are. Now I just wanted to say a quick thank you. I had Ryan Larkin, thank you for the super sticker before we went on air. And I had a couple of super chats I will get to in a moment, but I thought as I usually do, I will start off with a sort of a brief history, just so we're all in the same place. Often, particularly show-only people, don't get all of the background from the books. So, broadly speaking, the Wildlings, the Free Folk, they are first men. They are humans who came across at the sort of the great or the slow invasion of the first men down across the Arm of Dawn. They worked their way up through Westeros, and they were the ones who were at the forefront of this and ended up in the furthest north. So they are not different, culturally different from the other first men, except for the fact that at some point, obviously, the Wall appeared. Now, we shouldn't think the Wall, I'll come back to this in a moment, but the Wall did not start as this huge 7-foot high wall. It started off as just a normal sized wall, but once the Wall is there, that obviously separates humans into two different groups. The people below the Wall and the people north of the Wall. And over time, this wasn't immediate, but over time, one key difference happened. There's lots of smaller differences that we'll work our way through over the course of this live stream, but the key difference is that south of the Wall, they developed this system of kings and rulers, and one person in charge and everybody else following them, because that is the set way of things. North of the Wall, they did not. They are not just one culture, they are many, many different cultures all over the place, from small villages and families to much wider groups of people. But they all resisted this idea that there would be a king who everyone else must follow. They may decide to follow a leader, each of these different groups, but they do not have to in the way they do south of the Wall. So in the south, having got this barrier between these two very broad people, south of the Wall, north of the Wall, the people in the south started to see the people in the north as savages, as uncivilized, because they hadn't got all of these kind of advances that they had in the south. And some of these things were bits of knowledge and learning with the maesters and all the rest of it. Some of these things were bits of technology. North of the Wall, they don't have much by way of metalworking or anything like that, so it looks more primitive to the people in the south, and a lot of their culture remained broadly unchanged. They carried on worshipping the old gods and so on, compared to in the south, where obviously there was a very slow change over time. But to the people from the north of the Wall, the Free Folk, they looked down on the people south of the Wall because they thought they are kneelers. They are not free. They are living in this calcified society where the people who have the power and influence their children have power influence, their children have power and influence, and so on. Everyone else who does not have power and influence does not have it, and their children do not have it, and their children do not have it. And that they see as not good. These people are not free. They're not in charge of their own destiny. We've been because we're told the story from the point of view of the nobles in Westeros, we kind of gloss over it, but the vast majority of people in Westeros, yes, they are technically free, but if their lord says you must do this, they have to do it. And the people north of the wall, the free folk, they do not want that. So that is the big cultural dividing line between those north of the wall and those south of the wall. And over time, whereas the wall was almost certainly built to be protecting against the others, over time, because of these cultural differences, and the moment you create a wall, you create people that you do not understand, you mistrust, and they are othered. The play on words by George R. R. Martin is intentional. And eventually it came to the point of trying to keep the wildlings out. Even the word wildlings implies some sort of savagery. That's not what the free folk call themselves. That's what the people south of the wall call them, wildlings. So over time, this wall became seen as a way to keep the free folk, the wildlings, out. But broadly speaking, the free folk didn't mind. They were living their own lives. They were happy with this, and all was fine and good. Every now and then, these separate tribes would be brought together by a king, what was called the king beyond the wall. The difference is that this was not a hereditary position. This was just somebody who had a cause, who had leadership skills, who had charisma, who everybody wanted to follow for whatever reason. And we get a few famous ones down through the years. Joramun, who I'll talk about soon. And in the story we have here, we have Mance Rayder. Often it's a threat to the free folk that brings them all together under one leader. And so where we're at in the story is that the free folk, obviously, they are the people who are facing the initial attacks from the others. So whereas south of the wall, they can ignore it, they can scoff at it, they can pretend it's not happening, the free folk can't, because the others are very much there and they're very real. Their children, their dead, are being resurrected, and as whites, this is something that they have to deal with. So Mance Rayder calls everyone together, and he basically says, okay, we've got to get south of the wall. The wall is the thing which will now protect us. And he leads people on this kind of merry dance across the north, trying to find the Horn of Winter, which legend says if you blow it, it can bring the wall down. I personally suspect it won't or can't, but we'll get onto that in a moment. But anyway, they can't find it. They find a nice shiny horn that they decide they're going to pretend is the Horn of Winter, but they decide to launch this attack. Mance Rayder sends some people over the wall to attack Castle Black from the south, as well as his main bulk attacking from the north. Jon Snow, however, who was a part of that little team, he betrayed them, and he saved Castle Black from the attack from the south, and in so doing was the death of his lover Ygritte. So they then have an army just north of the wall, and they attack and they attack, and they can't quite get through, but then Stannis' army comes charging in from the east and defeats them, and they are scattered. Some of them are captured, some of them surrender, lots of them are scattered. So where we're at in the story is that some of them have gone west. We hear stories of some of them off near the Shadow Tower. Some of them, a few thousand, have gone east. They've gone over to Hardhome. Some of them have been captured or brought south of the wall, and then a few others sort of remained out in the forest. Jon sends Val, who we will again talk about in a moment, off to talk to Tormund, Giantsbane, who is the leader of a lot of these, and persuade him to bring his people into Castle Black and south of the wall. So a lot of these free folk are now south of the wall, in and around Castle Black. Jon Snow has agreed. He's getting them to man the wall. So he's refurbishing some of the abandoned castles on forts on the wall and getting the free folk to be manning them. So this is his grand plan. However, of course, this all slightly blows up in his face, where he was going to send off a team to go and help capture or rescue the free folk in Hardhome, but then he gets the pink letter. He changes all his plans. He's going to go off and attack Winterfell, but then he gets killed. And so the question is, what then? We've got lots of wildlings, free folk everywhere. Some have knelt, but none of them probably have any huge affiliation to the kings and leaders south of the wall. But where are they going from here? Lots of different places. We shouldn't see them as one specific group with one specific set aim other than survival. They are lots of very, very different cultures. So a few super chats. Thank you so much. Marvin Martin saying, why do the children of the forest hide from the first men, the old god wildlings? So the wildlings, the free folk, most of them do worship the old gods. Not all of them. Some of them worship cold gods. Some of them actually they have, their leader is deemed to be sort of almost a deity. That they've got lots of different religions, but the predominant religion is still that of the old gods. The children of the forest are still believed north of the wall. People recognize that they are still there. It's just that they're not in huge amounts of contact with them. This is probably because there aren't many children of the forest left. So I don't think it's a matter specifically that the children of the forest are not in contact with the wildlings. It's just that there's not many of them left. So the possibilities for contact are quite limited. Cucumber, thank you, saying, recently found your channel, Robert, a blessing in quarantine. Have probably binged around half of your Song of Ice and Fire videos in the span of a week and a half. Well, welcome. If this is your first live stream, and thank you so much. Half of my Song of Ice and Fire videos in the span of a week and a half is pretty impressive. I've made quite a few over the last 3 or so years. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's been a cause of huge personal pleasure to be able to help in whatever small way get through such a tough time that I know we've all been going through in 2020. So thank you. I love hearing that kind of thing. Mara Lee, thank you so much. Very generous super chat. And Mara, you know how much I appreciate your personal support. Saying, thank you so much, Robert, for all the fabulous content and stories on both your channels. How do you think Tormund's character arc will end in the last 2 books? Do you think it'll be similar to the TV show? Well, this just on the 2 channels. For those who don't know, I have a second channel. It's called The Well Told Tale. It's an audio narration channel. I love classic science fiction and fantasy, and I love sharing it. So this is a channel where I just read the classic science fiction and fantasy stories just as audiobooks. So if that appeals to you, if you would at some point love to listen to The Call of Cthulhu, War of the Worlds, Frankenstein, any of these kind of classic stories that that perhaps you've always wanted to read but have never quite found the time for, then please do check that out. And a very brief apology if you are a subscriber to The Well Told Tale, for if you listened to part 3 of Deathworld by Harry Harrison, which is a fantastic story. I uploaded it yesterday. Brief backstory. During the last week or so, I thought, you know what, I think I need to upgrade my laptop, which I have done. I've got a new and better laptop, which is fantastic. However, as is always the way when you upgrade technology, there were some glitches, and in uploading the story, it turned inexplicably, and I didn't double check this before I set it live, so mea culpa, it inexplicably turned into what I can only describe as a sort of 1980s electro pop tribute. It was very weird, whatever happened with the audio. So if you listen to it, then apologies. I've cleaned it up, I've sorted it out, and it is now back up there. The Deathworld Part 3, so please do go and check that one out. In terms of Tormund's character arc, what's going to be happening with him? So Tormund was a much larger character on the show than he is in the books. He is an important character in the books, but on the show they used him pretty much as the Wildlings, as this one character who showed us what the character of the Wildlings was. That this is something they did a lot on the show. For the Unsullied, we had Grey Worm. They often had a person for the Dothraki. It changed sort of through time, but there was a person that they would focus in on to sort of express what they were like. This was what they would do, was they would have a central figure, and they used Tormund as being the central figure for the Wildlings, and so we hardly ever actually saw what the rest of the Wildlings were about. We just saw Tormund. So as a result, he had a really big role. Now, his role now in the books is quite big. He is the biggest leader of the Wildlings. Mance is the king beyond the wall, but everybody thinks that he's dead. So what will he do? Well, he respects Jon, and I think that his role as a sort of an arbiter of the free folk in the aftermath of Jon's death will be absolutely critical. I think he probably will form as was the plan, a part of a team or lead a team to go up to Hardhome. Jon's not going to be doing that, so it's not going to be the same as we saw on the show there. I think that we will see Tormund go up there to Hardhome, and he probably will be part of the defense at the wall against the others when the others reach. If you remember on the show, he was there. It was him and Beric they had, who actually witnessed the Night King burning down the wall effectively. And I think that is probably a nod to the fact that the Wildlings are going to be the people defending the wall. Therefore, the Wildlings will be the people who witness how it is that the others, as they surely will breach the wall's defenses. So that, I think, is what is going on with him. I don't think that he is... I mean, he's not this great friend to Jon. They may well develop a kinship, but it's not going to be the same sort of level as it was on the show. Let's see, I think I had another one. I'm pretty sure I had another super chat I didn't want to miss. Here we go. So Lies for a Sinner, thank you so much for the super chat, saying, May Gavanan, Robert, and everyone. Hey, Robert, what do you think of the chances for survival of the Wildlings in the north? Do you think there will be any left to return north, should they even do that? Yeah, so there are lots of Wildlings, and the Wildlings are all over the place, as I said. So we've got some in Hardhome. I think a lot of them are probably not going to survive. We've got some over near the Shadow Tower. I suspect that some of them will sort of sneak around the side of the wall. We've got some manning the wall. Some have been sent down into the Gift. So I think that, yes, some will survive simply because they're all over the place, and some will make it through. So that, I think, is the main point, is that some will survive, and some will want to head back north afterwards. As I said, the big thing we have to understand about the free folk is that they aren't a folk. It's that we talk about them as if they're one big nation. They are not. They're dozens, hundreds, thousands of different cultures. Some of them just a few dozen, some of them thousands strong. So when they go north, they are not going north to form a new nation. They are going to go back out and do their individual things in different places. So I certainly imagine some will want to stay south of the wall, some will want to go north of the wall, but a lot will die, if only because they're the first in line for the others. And the Stark in Winterfell saying, who do you think will be the narrator for the trip to Hardhome, or will we only hear of it? This is a really interesting question. So John has already sent Cotter Pike, who's this guy off at Eastwatch. He sent them up with some boats up to Hardhome, where we hear a few thousand of the Wildlings went. Hardhome is the closest thing there was to a free folk city. It was destroyed in an inexplicable explosion 600 years ago. Is basically all we have on it. You can go very tinfoil about what might have caused that explosion, but the facts are there was an explosion 600 years ago that destroyed Hardhome, but obviously it's still a place, and some people do still live in the ruins, and there are, or more precisely, there's like a cliffside with lots of caves in it, and some of the Wildlings live in the caves and all the rest of it. So people have headed off to there. John has sent Cotter Pike up with a few ships just to sort of basically say, hey, you've got to get out of there, jump on these ships, come back. This is the only way for you. But he then came up with a plan of heading north with Tormund to Hardhome overland, effectively, to try and rescue as many as he could. Then he changed his mind. He said he wanted to go down to Winterfell, but Tormund, you go up there on your own. I think we will have an overland expedition there. I think that's it's the kind of thing that Tormund would want to do anyway. I don't think we will see it in the first person. The simple fact is that in the wall, we're actually now suffering from a shortage of POV characters. We had a few up there. We had Davos was up there, Sam was up there, John was there. Davos has been sent away. John obviously has died. Sam has gone down to the south coast. So the only person we've got alive still at the moment, and this is why George R. R. Martin introduced her as a POV character, because otherwise we would not see what's going to happen at the wall. The only person we have at the moment is Melisandre. So we will see what happens at the wall for the first part of the Winds of Winter through Melisandre's eyes. That is what's going on there. In terms of what happens at Hardhome, no, I don't think we're going to have a new POV character created for a mission to Hardhome. We could see it either in the way that we understand what has happened from Cotter Pike by messages sent back. We could have something similar there, or perhaps Melisandre maybe see some things in her flames, or perhaps Bran could see something that's going on there. But the TV show with the Hardhome episode, that they made that bit up. Yes, there was something similar will happen in the books, but John going up there and all the rest of it, that's not going to happen. So the we're not going to see it firsthand, is what I'm saying. George R. R. Martin has said whether he sticks to it or not, I do not know. But he has said that he's not going to introduce any new POV characters in The Winds of Winter, except for prologue and potential epilogue. So we're not going to see that happen firsthand. It's just going to be one of those things which is seemingly important but happens off page. Kevin Warner saying, what do you think the role or endgame for Val and Mance's son will be? Will his actually being their son play a role, possibly foreshadowing Jon? Okay, so now we get into the murky waters of the baby swap. So we had two babies at the wall. We had Gilly's baby, who was obviously her baby with Crasta. And we also had Dalla's baby. Now, Dalla, she was a wildling who died in childbirth, and this was Mance Rayder's baby son. And Val was Dalla's sister. So Val is effectively sister-in-law to Mance. They're not. There's no marriage involved there. That's not the thing. But there's a close relationship going on there, and Val helped deliver that baby. So there are these two babies. However, Melisandre has been very much talking about king's blood, and we have to, this is how we get magic, and all the rest of it. And in order to protect Mance Rayder's son, and Mance, let's not forget, is the king beyond the wall, so his son is king's blood. In order to protect them, Jon effectively forced a baby swap on Gilly and Sam. And he said, your baby's staying up here, and we're going to pretend that this is Dalla's baby, Mance Rayder's baby, and you're going to take the other baby down south. So the baby swap is going on there. In what role is it? What is it foreshadowing for Jon? I think the main role here is that Melisandre will want to perform some magic. She will almost certainly, I think she will see something in the flames. She will want to help Stannis. She will want to clear away some of the snow and the winter that's going on. It's already being a hindrance to him. And she's going to say, in order to do this, I need king's blood. And right, hand me Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall's son. At which point the great revelation will be made. Actually, this isn't Mance Rayder's son. So this isn't king's blood. So you can't do that. Where does she go? What other king's blood is there around? Shireen. So I think that is the main role that we've got going on there. Yes, I know that there are many conspiracy theories about perhaps whether Gilly's son, who was obviously destined for being offered to the others, whether that's going to have some importance. But I think the key thing going on here is that this is what is going to, the absence of king's blood that she does not care about, or people do not care about, will mean that Melisandre has to get king's blood from somewhere else. And a question from Facio, thank you very much, saying, do you think Osha and Rickon will play any role in the Wildlings storyline, or even bring the people of Skagos to fight the others? I don't think so. Background, Rickon and Osha went off when Bran went north of the wall. They sent off Osha with Rickon and Shaggy Dog to go somewhere else for their own protection. They thought, let's split up. They can't do that. It'll be harder for people to get both of us. They went off, and apparently they ended up on Skagos, which is this island sort of off the northeast coast of Westeros. They are known to be a particularly violent and savage people, or at least That's what the rumours are. And now Davos has been sent to find Rickon and bring him back into the game. Now, my best guess is that Davos will find Rickon, that he might do a little bit of hunting for a chapter or two, but he will find him, and I think that he will manage to bring him back with Osha. But at some point, as I suspect everybody's agreed on, Rickon's story is not going to end well. Somewhere along the line, he is going to die. Not exactly the same way as on the show, but quite possibly the Boltons will get in on the act and will kill him. He is, after all, a Stark, and they're looking to be killing off any Starks who might be potentially trying to claim the throne. So I think that's what's going to be going on. I don't think that they're going to play into the Wildling storyline at all. I don't think they'll get that far. I love the idea of them bringing this army from Skagos across from the west, but there's absolutely no indication that the people of Skagos care about what's going on really in the Seven Kingdoms, and the others haven't reached them yet. So why on earth would they believe Davos when he comes up and tries to persuade people, or indeed why would they follow Rickon? They don't owe him fealty or anything like that. So no, I don't think that they will be there. There are not the horny goats that are there will remain there, I'm sorry to say. Question from Vilanjo, saying, "Hi Robert, I love your content. Thank you very much. I was wondering, are there wildlings that worship or sacrifice to the White Walkers like Craster did?" Yes, probably. I think Craster seems to be the most egregious example of this. However, there are, if you sort of head up to sort of the north and west towards the lands of Always Winter, then you get more and more the wildlings turn from worshipping the old gods to worshipping, and they've got various names like the cold gods or the cold ones and things like that, which seem to be the others. So yes, there are some. Whether they know what it is that they're worshipping is an entirely different thing. Craster seems to have an understanding of what's going on. Whether the sort of the other wildlings who do similar things do as well, who knows? It's not entirely clear. We don't have a huge amounts of information about each of the individual wildling clans. So the short answer is yes. But the intentionality is something that's a little bit uncertain. Okay. Let's go to some questions from my patrons. My patron, if you're a patron of In Deep Geek, then one of the benefits for all of my patrons at every level is priority questions for live streams. I put up a link a day or so beforehand, and every patron gets to ask a question. So Henning J saying, "Hi Robert, welcome back, thank you. My question, there are some clans in the north who are very wildling-like. This is the north below the wall. But obviously those clans had finally accepted to bend the knee and to swear allegiance to the Starks. Are there any other differences between those northern clans south of the wall and the wildlings beyond the wall?" Well, so the houses that I think you're talking about are the ones the mountain clans, effectively. If you picture the north below the wall, you get Winterfell, you get the Wolfswood, which is sort of west and north of it. The other side of the Wolfswood, you get this huge mountain range that stretches all the way up to the wall. In those mountains, you get clans or houses. They're called houses by the people of the south, but in reality they're close to being like mountain clans. They're things like House Wull, who the member of House Wull incidentally was one of the 7 who went the the Tower of Joy with Ned Stark. They are loyal to the Starks. They were particularly loyal to Ned Stark, who they clearly respected. But they aren't set up in the same way that northern houses are, for example. But they come under the protection of the Starks, and particularly when it comes to the winter, then they send their young folk down to Wintertown, just outside Winterfell, where there are the hot springs, and this is how they can ensure that their people can survive through the winter, by making sure that their young folk are at Wintertown. So what are the differences between them and North of the Wall? Well, this is millennia of them accepting the fact that they have a sort of a liege lord relationship. It's a loose one with the Starks. A lot of the time when they call the banners, and they don't bother calling the banners of the mountain clans. Ned did, but that hasn't always been the case. So that is the key difference. They are first men, as North of the Wall. They are worshippers of the old gods, as most North of the Wall are. But I think whereas there is a degree of homogeneity in the culture of the mountain clans of the North, the Wildlings, the free folk, are very diverse in how they live. There are some who are just effectively a small farming community. Some of them are hunter-gatherers. Some of them live in towns. Some of them have a matriarchal system. Some of them have various other structures. It's every different bit of culture of the free folk is different. So to compare the one to the other is almost apples and a fruit basket, if that makes sense. You can they are very similar to some of the people north of the wall, but not all of them. Stephen Dillon saying, why do you think there were so many who were left north of the wall when Bran the Builder created it? It seems odd that they leave anyone north of the wall, considering that they know the capabilities of the others. They seem to be of first men blood, so were there when Bran built it. Do you think they were advanced forces or scouts to warn the Watch of when the others came back? So the wall was built at a certain place when some people happen to live beyond it, is the way that I would sort of try. If you take yourself back to that point in history, it was built specifically in what seemed to be a defendable situation, so you could build it from the sea at one side to a huge river at the other side, which now seems to have formed a great gorge. So that seems to be a defendable point at which they decided this is where we're going to build the wall. And then the people north of the wall, they will have seen it being built. They will have had the opportunity to decide which side do they want to be on, and they clearly decided that they wish to stay north of the wall. This implies a few things to me. The most important one of those is that when the wall was built, the apparent threat from the others was not there. People did not think that the others were immediately going to come and attack, or otherwise everybody would have been south of the wall. There was enough time to build a wall. There was enough time to decide which side of the wall you want to live on. So the wall was built in a time of, I'm not saying necessarily peace, but at a time when the others were not there as an immediate and present threat. So that is, I think, the answer to this question of why the Wildlings weren't south, is because at that time there was not a present threat from the others, and they were proven right over millennia. The others did not return. So that is why they are there. They did not think that there was a present threat from them, and over time they were proven right. Shadow Fox saying, as we know, the Wildlings are not a single people, but multicultural tribes living in a single region with different laws, customs, etc. But they all appear to share the idea of stealing women to help keep the tribe strong. Do you think this is something necessary for a tribe's survival, and is there a real-world comparison? Well, is there a real-world comparison? I suspect George R. R. Martin might have been taking inspiration from, say, the Vikings, who quite often would raid places like, say, the east of England and steal women and take them back and make them their wives. That was a historical example that George R. R. Martin may well have taken some inspiration from. In terms of how does this work sort of historically and culturally, if you imagine the way that the tribes are, the tribes of the free folk, there are a dozen people living here, there are 24 people living there, there's 500 up there, there's another dozen over here. They're dotted about all over the place in quite small groups. Now they have to, in some way, in order to prevent people just sort of marrying their own, they have to intermarry with other groups. Now, if they're wishing to maintain their own cultures, because they're very clear that their culture is different and better to that culture over there, then what's the way to do that? They have to be stealing people. That appears to be the sort of the genetic drive, if that's the best way of saying that, is to be taking people and showing, and this is part of the culture which does unite the North, is this idea that you respect strength. You don't follow someone just because they've got a job title of being lord or king, whatever it. You follow someone if they are strong enough, and the North is a hard place. You have to be strong in order to survive it. So you follow someone who is strong. And so, yes, we have got this on the face of it, and in reality, really quite horrific practice of people going and kidnapping women and bringing them back and making them their wives. The culture is that the woman is supposed to fight against this. And women are not seen as being this sort of like meek and mild, oh, well, obviously I'll just do what I'm told kind of culture. The spear wives are a culture across the piece, and spear wives are not wives who carry spears. They are women who are married to a spear, because that is their job, their livelihood, and all the rest of it, being warriors. So the women are just as much fighters as the men. And so if the man takes the woman, or as Ygritte does with Jon, she says that she's taking him, it does sometimes happen the other way around, then that is just a reflection of the wider culture of you follow strength, you follow capability, you follow somebody you respect. If the woman does not want to be taken, she will not be taken, is the sort of the underlying thing going on there. So it's is it necessary for tribe survival? Yes, because otherwise you just get intermarriage within a small tribe, and that obviously never works. Milton Appling wants to know about the Wildlings as first men or real Northerners and their relationship to the giants and the children. I talked about the relationship with the children of the forest already. In terms of the giants do live, they are real, they live in the North. It appears that there were lots of them in the North, north of the Wall a while ago, but some still survive. So we had one on the show. In the books, there are a few. Their relationship to the giants appears to be mutual respect and coexistence. They're seen as being a related race, but not the same. Giants are, for context, they're described as being, I think one is described as being 14 foot tall, so they're sort of 2 and a bit people high. they are clearly different, but at the same time they can communicate and they look very similar. So there's a mutual respect for one another. In terms of the evolution, you're also asking about evolution of the mission of the Night's Watch from guarding against the others to guarding against the Wildlings. Yeah, I think this is just mission creep over a long period of time. If you've had millennia, generation after generation after generation after generation of standing on the wall, watching out for a mythological creature that has not appeared for millennia, that you think is just a legend that no one's ever seen or heard or thought about for such a long time, you obviously start to think, well, that's not the real reason I'm here. What am I actually protecting the realms of men from? Well, perhaps it's these people who every now and then sneak over or under or around the wall and raid and do bad things. We have to be trying to protect against them. So I think it's just a basic human, and it's easy for us to sort of castigate the watch for this, but it is understandable. This was literally millennia. It's like us, the equivalent of Egyptian gods being, if we had a wall to protect against the return of the Egyptian gods, we'd go, well, we've not seen them for a long time. Maybe they don't exist. So that's the kind of the feel of how long ago it was that the people last saw the others, and why it is that they might just think they don't exist. What are we here to protect the realms of men from? I think I had another super chat. Did I? Yes, I did. Here we go. I've got one from Fodder for Foreshadowing, which is a great name, saying, morning from Oz. Do you think that Sam running off with Gilly means by free folk custom that they are married? Yes, in their own way. I mean, I think that she... he sort of went off with her. I don't think he sort of kidnapped her, that he was sort of pushed into it as much as anything else. But yes, this seemed to be certainly Ygritte seemed to accept that she and John were together, even though the traditional way hadn't worked. And the traditional way, as in all of these things, it seemed that didn't always happen exactly as tradition would suggest it should do. So I think the short answer is yes, and Gilly definitely thinks that they are. Sam also over time seems to come to this same opinion. So I think the short answer is yes. I think they are common law married, I think is probably the best way of saying it, rather than legally married. Angela Sanchez saying, hello, Robert. Hi. What is your take on Craster taking his sons to the walkers? Are they being turned into walkers like the show, or sacrificed? Yes. So I think they are. Well, so I should probably say the reason why there's some uncertainty is the scene when on the show we have the White Walker carrying the baby all the way to the far north, and then it getting eyes turning blue and all the rest of it. That was show only so far. And what we're told is that they are being sacrificed to the others, left out there in the freezing cold, but they are being taken away. That's all we know. So I think that the short answer is probably yes, they are. They are being taken away, and they are being turned into the others. And this probably partly explains why the others are becoming more bold, because if we make this assumption, unable to reproduce in and of themselves, having people who are sacrificed to them perhaps is a way that they can increase their numbers. So I think it's probably we don't know, but that seems to be most likely that is what is going on, that they are being sacrificed. John Martin saying, thanks for the great content, Robert. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Mr. E. Knight, thank you, saying the 1 man in 1,000 is a skin changer stat provided. Is that strictly to wildlings or northerners or first men blood? With wildlings set to inhabit the new gift, will there be more Southron skin changers and wargs? It certainly seems to be a first men thing. Now, the north of the wall, skin changers are a lot more culturally acceptable. So if you're a skin changer, that's absolutely fine. The implication is that south of the wall, skin changers may exist among the first men, but they're not they operate under the radar, so to speak. Maybe somebody just sort of skin changes into their pet cat or something like that. So that's clearly the Starks are not wildlings, they're not free folk. However, they have first men blood. So that seems to be the 1 in 1,000 thing seems to imply to the first men, but there does seem to be some sort of purity of the bloodline thing going on that George R. R. Martin does quite a lot of, which means that the further south you go, the more intermarriage there is, and so the less likely you are. So the 1 in 1,000 seems to be like if you are purely first men blood, then yeah, that's roughly right. And it's not exactly 1 in 1,000. I'm sure it just means quite a rare thing. But then the further south you go, the less likely it is that somebody becomes a skin changer. And Brian Price saying, do you think the end of the story will involve the opening of the gates or destruction of the wall leading to the open flow of people again? I think so. I don't think we're going to see huge amount. The short answer is that we always build up in our minds, what is it that the end of the story is going to be showing us? I don't think we're going to have as much detail as we want, is the short answer. But if the threat of the others has been categorically eliminated, pushed back, defeated, then yeah, of course, the wall should be got rid of. And I think that the way to deal with that first would be to fling open the gates, and then secondly, perhaps you can bring some of the wall down. Maybe, given the fact that this is a wall of ice, and yes, they've been sort of putting stones into it over time and all the rest of it, maybe when we get to spring, and we actually see the wall, we understand, weeps. It does melt. Maybe they just let it melt slowly over time. Maybe when we get to summer, the rays will start to melt the ice of the wall, and it will start to shrink over time. I mean, I've not really thought about it before. We will get on to Jon's final scene in the show. He went north of the wall, and we got this small shot of just like, there's some life returning. So there was a little plant or something coming up through the snow. I think that when we're getting a dream of spring, once the threat of the others has gone, I think that winter will go, and then I think we get to the end game, which is after the others. The others are going to be defeated, I suspect, partway through A Dream of Spring. Then we get the last bits, and then what we have after that is we've had a period of time where spring has come, maybe summer, and we get sunshine. And it would be exactly the kind of writing that George R. R. Martin loves. If we do see Jon going north of the wall at the end of it all, if he just talks about how the ice is starting to melt, and so the wall is weeping, but just a torrent rather than just like the occasional drip. So that would be incredibly symbolic. I think the first step is opening the gates, but just letting it melt is probably as good as anything. Okay, let's go back to some questions from my patrons. Catherine Furseth, what do we know about wildling legends, stories, and knowledge about the others? The North remembers it said, but the North seems to have forgotten a lot. Are wildling cultures any different? As in, do you believe that true insight on the others have survived to a greater extent among them? And do you think that knowledge from the wildlings will play a role in defeating or pushing back the others in A Song of Ice and Fire? Well, I think this is one of those yes and no questions. I think that the exact knowledge of how to defeat the others and all the rest of it, that has gone. However, it's very clear that there are a couple of things that the wildlings, the free folk, have retained. First of all, the free folk burn their dead. That's what they do. They burn their dead, whereas in the North, then they often, they're buried, interred, and the free folk burn their dead. That has to come from a cultural remembrance of, we don't leave our dead bodies lying around, because you know what happens if you leave dead bodies lying around. So there is clearly some cultural remembrance that hasn't got whittled away over time. And the other thing that there is a taking seriously of the stories. You get the classic example is you get Osha, and all the time you get this fantastic kind of to and fro when she was in Winterfell with Maester Lewin, who she kind of grew to respect, but at the same time he was rubbishing all this talk of the legends and stories and all the rest of it, and Bran would like raise something that old man said, and then Osha would say, oh yes, but actually you shouldn't just dismiss that. That is, I mean, she wouldn't say it in these words, but you shouldn't dismiss that. That might well be true. There's more there than you understand. And so there's the cultural belief that the legends, the stories, there is truth there. There is something there. Whereas south of the wall, there is not that cultural understanding. It's the wise people of the world, all the way through book one, constantly the people we're introduced to as being wise or clever, Maester Lewin, Tyrion, they mock the idea that others are real. They just dismiss it out of hand. North of the wall, everyone accepts that these things, I mean, the others are not just a fairy tale, they are a real thing that was there. It's just that they've gone away for a long time. So that's the key thing that's going on there, is that the stories are there and the stories are actually believed. Vlacho says, hello again. In the show, John says that the wildlings have attacked the wall 6 times and failed. Is that in the books? What's the history behind that? Well, I can't remember when he says that they have attacked the wall 6 times and failed, whether he was just referring to in the specific battle, so the battle beneath the wall, then there were various waves of attack on the wall. I think that's probably what he was referring to there. But in the history of the wildlings, then yes, they've attacked the wall on various occasions. And it's not just 6, it's hundreds, thousands over the years. And as they climb over the wall, they try and go under the wall, they attack it, they go around it. The wall is just seen as an inconvenience to the free folk. So yes, they have, and we get Gendel and Gorn, we get the history of, we get the Horned King, I think he's called. We get Bale the Bard. You get wildlings come south of the wall many times, even like in the last few generations we read about wildling armies going south of the wall and the Starks having to react and come and attack them. So yes, it's not just 6 times, it's many times that they've done this. The wall, it has to be said that the wall is not a particularly, especially now, the wall is not a particularly good defense against the others. They've mastered the art of climbing over the wall, as we saw on the show, but yes, some wildlings do. I mean, it is a treacherous climb, but wildlings do it all the time. There are routes under the wall, the gorge at the western end. Then the wildlings, some of them, it's quite hard to get to, and it's a long route around, but they can just walk along the bottom of the gorge and get past the wall that way. At the other side, at Eastwatch, then there's actually a little trade route that goes on between the wildlings and Eastwatch. They just get in their boat and they row around the wall, and then they trade stuff. The wall is not a great defense against humans with a little bit of ingenuity, which goes to show that this was not the original intention, to keep out humans. Yes, that's I can't remember what the question was I was answering there, but the wildlings do not treat the wall as being a thing which is going to stop them when they want to get south of the wall. It's only a problem when they've got this massive army that they're trying to get across. Sydney McCall saying George R.R. Martin has noted that the people of Westeros view wildlings as others. I read the usage of wildling instead of free folk as a blatant attempt at dehumanizing the supposed lawless people beyond the wall. But George presents the wrinkle of the great other, the whites who are in fact the threat to all of humanity. Is this juxtaposition meant to serve as a commentary on how tribal and hierarchical, economically, racially, faith-wise, etc., our real world can be, and how these quarrels blind us to the great other in our own universe? Also, how do you think the wildlings are going to react to seeing a dragon? Well, on the last bit, how they will react to see the dragon, I suspect is how everyone reacts to see a dragon. They will believe in dragons. They're not going to be horrified or anything like that, but dragons are huge and they are scary, and they will react in the way that everybody reacts. In terms of the great other, this is fascinating. It's a fascinating thing if you ever want to play it. Is words and phrases that only appear once in A Song of Ice and Fire. It used to be a great game on Google before Google got huge. It was called a Google Whack. If you could find a search for something on Google and there was only one result came up, that was called a Google Whack. In A Song of Ice and Fire, there are lots of very surprising things that only are mentioned once, like the phrase Tower of Joy, for example. Another one that is only mentioned once is the Great Other. So the Great Other is only mentioned once, and it is mentioned by Melisandre. This is part of her faith's belief system, that there is an opposite god to her god, who is the Great Other. This isn't mentioned by the wildlings. This isn't mentioned by Old Man or anything like that. This is the only mention is from Melisandre. So it's at the moment it's not at all clear that the wildlings believe that there is this Great Other figure. But in terms of sort of the broader point about dehumanizing people by othering them, then yes, this is something George R.R. Martin is very clearly trying to do. The others, othering is a psychological term, something that we do when people are different to us. We other them, we make them out to be less than human in some way. We don't understand them, we don't try to understand them, and then we create a barrier between us and them, in this case quite literally a wall. George R.R. Martin calling them the others is quite literally showing that this is what happens when you other someone. The hint there under it all is that by doing that, we have created a barrier to prevent us from understanding what's really going on. When the others come, yes, they're doing horrible things, but we do not understand why, because we do not understand them, because we have built a barrier between us and them. With the wildlings, calling them what, I think you're entirely right. The people in the South saying wildling is an attempt to other the wildlings. It's to say that they're not like us, they're savages. That is exactly what's going on. And George R.R. Martin is showing us that this happens not just a sort of against people that perhaps we can understand why we might want to build a huge wall between us and the others, but also between us and other people who are actually quite similar. The free folk are actually quite similar to the first men in the north. Question from Lawnduck20 saying, Robert, welcome back. Thank you. We know the king beyond the wall, Joramun, helped the king of winter, Brandon the Breaker, defeat the Night's King and his reign of terror. But why weren't the wildlings allowed into the realm after? You would think Westeros would be thankful for their help, but this does not appear to be the case. Why do you think this is? Also, when Joramun blew the horn to wake the giants from the earth, was this to help defeat the Night's King or to defeat the Night's Watch? So, in answer to the first part of this, why after that? So this is, actually, I should give the background. This is way back in time, with the time of the Night's King in the books, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. So not a huge amount of time, maybe a century or so after the Night's Watch had been founded, he started effectively consorting with the others, went all evil, baddie, and all the rest of it, and then the king beyond the wall and the king of the north joined forces and defeated him. Now, the king beyond the wall, Joramun, the question is, why after that did the Wildlings, were they not allowed down south? I don't think they wanted to. I think that they were very happy living where they were. Why on earth would they want to come and live down south? Their home was up north. Why would they want to do that? So it's they don't view being in the south, being a Neela, as something to aspire to. They don't see it as something that they particularly want to be or do. In terms of the waking giants from the earth, is it to destroy the Night's King or the Night's Watch? This was very much to destroy the Night's King. That seems clearly the point of what was going on there, was that the Horn of Winter was blown, giants from the earth were awoken. I've done a video on what I think that means. Giants from the earth were awoken and the Night's King was destroyed. My personal take is that after that, the Horn of Winter was broken by Bran the Breaker. I think that is what happened next. But this was the Wildlings and the Night's Watch. Well, the Wildlings and House Stark joining forces in order to defeat the others effectively. And yes, that is a sort of foreshadowing of what we're going to see in the story. Just a very, as I do roughly halfway through all of my live streams, just a very quick update on what's going on. As I say, I've just come back from holiday, so I've been I've got reinvigorated. I've got a few videos in the works. My Lord of the Rings content is going to be carrying on. I've got a few videos coming up there, including something that I got nerdily interested in, which was a George R.R. Martin quote. Incidentally, when he was critiquing the Lord of the Rings, he loves the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and all the rest of it, but he critiqued Tolkien, and by talking about Aragorn, and he said that Tolkien just had this idea that if you had a good king, then the land would prosper. But we don't actually hear huge amounts about what Aragorn was like as this great high king. What did he actually do? What were his policies? What was, he said, Aragorn's tax policy? And I just thought, hey, I'll make a video of that. What was Aragorn's tax policy? So if you're interested in actually trying to dig into what sort of king, what sort of policies did Aragorn have as king? How did he rule? What made him not a bad king, not an autocrat, but actually a good and powerful and right king? I've got that video, which is going to be coming out in about a week or so's time. I've also got my long teased video on just how big will the Winds of Winter be. It's a massive video. I'm hoping to get it done for this weekend. I may even do it as a YouTube premiere if I have the time and inclination, so keep an eye out for that on either Saturday or Sunday. It's a very long video, because I'm breaking down all the different storylines that I think there are going to be in the Winds of Winter, and try to work out how many chapters do we need in order to tell this story. So that's what I'm doing. It's been a bit of a labor of love. It's the longest sort of scripted video I've ever done by quite a long way, which is why it's taken me a long time. But it should be finished soon. People asking about the picture on my wall, which is up here somewhere. It is a long way away. It is by the remarkably talented Vanessa Cole, and it is a Westworld picture with lots of different characters from Westworld on it. I will probably swap that over. I've got a new Vanessa Cole picture, which I'm going to be putting up. So maybe next week there will be a different picture up there. So keep an eye out for that. I think that's it. Oh, the other thing I would say, patrons, thank you. I cannot do what I do without your support. Thank you. I hugely appreciate it. That's why I give these benefits to patrons at different levels. So as I say, every patron gets a chance to have priority questions for these live streams. $10 level, you get to vote every now and then on future content. $5, access to all of the audio I produce here on this channel. So if you're interested in any of that and a few other extra goodies that I do for my patrons, then do check out the link down in the description. Let's go back to some more questions from my patrons. Jamie McKenna saying Vanessa Cole is dope AF. I agree. Lily Mellon saying, hi Robert, would you say a little about Varamir Six Skins? I was struck by him witnessing Thistle becoming a white, seeing as his body was with hers. Surely if they were able to animate both corpses, any human would be distracted by seeing themselves and their own person being controlled. Thistle may have been less of a focus. Do you think this suggested they couldn't animate his corpse as his consciousness was elsewhere, or have you any other thoughts? Okay, so for those who don't know, Varamir Six Skins was a character. We get introduced to him a little bit early in the narrative, but basically it's really in a prologue that we get to see him dance dragons, and he's there. He's a skin changer. He's called Varamir Six Skins because he's got a number of different animals that he's sort of bondage to. He can move his body into, but he's getting old. He gets attacked, and he's reaching the end of his age. He's not a very nice guy. And he decides, what does he want to do? Well, Thistle, who's this younger woman who was near him, he thinks, you know what, I'm going to try and just take over her body in the same way that Bran takes over Hodor's body. He tries this, but she basically fights and pushes him out. And he has to then go off, shooting off to become his wolf. And we see him heading off there. Now, after this, he then sees Thistle, who has been killed by the others and brought back as a white, and he sees her blue eyes, and this is very chilling for him. So what's going on there? Does this imply that his body couldn't be resurrected? No, it doesn't. We don't know what happened to his body. Maybe it got burned, maybe it was turned into a white and we just didn't see it because whoever was controlling it took it somewhere else. There are lots of different possibilities. I don't think we need to draw, or we should draw, an implication from that his body could not be brought back as a white. So I don't think there's any particular reason for that. The interesting thing with Varamir, there are many interesting things with Varamir, but it's the point of having him as the prologue, with him as a skin changer at the end of his life, going into his wolf, I think is very clear, so that we go, extra knowledge. When a skin changer dies, they can then go off into their wolf. What happens towards the end of the book? Jon dies. What's the last thing he does? He calls out Ghost's name. So, and the exact same, even the description of what happens then is the same. Varamir goes cold, feels this kind of cold go rush through him, and Jon also feels this kind of cold rush through him. The clear implication is that George R.R. Martin was giving us the clues that we needed, that he was going to go into Ghost. So yes, he was killed, his body was killed, but he was going to move on into Ghost. Joken Hagar saying, how big will the Winds of Winter be? The question is, how long will that video be? It's, I think, going to be 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes long. It's quite a long video, and as you'd expect, I enjoyed the irony of the fact that I've been promising this for a long time, my video about the Winds of Winter, and never quite delivering it, and it's getting longer each time I go back into it. So the irony was not lost on me at all. Amara Lee, Osha is with Rickon Stark on Skagos. How do you see her story arc playing out once Davos finds Rickon and brings him back to White Harbor? Will she come back with them, stay on Skagos, go back to her old life beyond the wall? I think she's going to stay with Rickon for the time that Rickon is still alive. I think one thing which it's easily forgotten now, but George R. R. Martin, 3 or 4 years ago, he was asked what was actually a really insightful question from, I honestly can't remember who asked him the question, but it was along the lines of, you've been watching the TV show, obviously they're taking your characters and they've got actors who are playing them, who have their own slant on your characters. Are there any characters who, because of the way that the actor has been playing them, you've been sort of like inspired to change what you write about them? And his answer, as I say, it was a great question, and his answer was, yeah, actually Osha. He'd always thought of Osha as just being like this bit part character, just a supporting act. Rickon needed somebody to be traveling with him, so that's where she was. Earlier on, they all needed somebody who was there showing the wildling ways, so there she was. But the actor or the actress playing Osha, I can't remember her name, he thought had done such a fantastic job bringing that character to life that he was going to add in a little bit more of Osha than he would previously have done. So expect a little bit more from Osha. She's not just going to be this support act. She will probably have a lot more interacting with Davos, and then when she then comes down, he will be taking her and Rickon to White Harbor initially, which is about as civilized as you get in the north. So I think that we will probably see a lot of her interacting with the characters in White Harbor. So question from Nicola Tricola saying, hi Robert, great to have you back. Thank you. I hope you are well rested. I am. Would you please talk about Craster? Who may be his father? Why wasn't he accepted on the wall as a baby when Mance was? Lastly, do you think he communicates with the White Walkers somehow, or is it a coincidence that he sent Black Brothers to the Fist and the others attacked? Okay, so the Craster was born of a Night's Watchman and a Wildling mother. The Night's Watchman abandoned the woman after she became pregnant, or shortly after the birth. She then went to the wall saying, look, here's a baby, take the baby, and she got chased away by Night's Watchman. So the question is, why was Craster as a baby chased away? I don't think it was anything about the baby, Craster as a baby. I don't think they took a look at the baby and go, oh no, we don't want that baby, we'll take this baby, not that baby. I think it was simply that the Night's Watchman who was there did not wish to have that baby there. He did not wish to have evidence of his breaking his Night's Watch vows. So perhaps he and his mates chased that woman away. I think it's probably something as simple as that. I don't think there's a reason for us to sort of invent an extra layer of story here. Who may be his father? Well, Craster is old, we're told, reaching the end of his life. He's got white hair. He's got all of these wives, and we're told that he had, I think it was something like 19 wives who were of marriageable age, and a number of other daughters below that, which seems to imply that that's been going on for maybe 40 years or so. Probably makes him maybe 60 or so. So his father would have to be 80 or so. I mean, we're talking ballpark figures here, but we're talking somebody, if they're still alive, then they're quite an old person. None of them characters currently on the wall is Craster's dad. That much is clear. So we're looking at who might have been on the wall 80 years ago. There are people who suggest maybe this was Bloodraven, or maybe there was other things. My take is it doesn't have to be anyone. Craster he's not noticeably magical. He's not noticeably, yes, they meet him, the Night's Watchman, so he is a person that we meet, but that doesn't mean that he's particularly special. The only thing that is special about him is that he's one of the few wildlings who is not against the Night's Watch. Most of the wildlings are, because the Night's Watch, all they do is trying to kill and push back the wildlings and all the rest of it. Craster, perhaps because his father was a Night's Watchman, he's not friends with them, but he's willing to do business with them. So that's where he is. He doesn't show anything particularly special or magical about him. The only other tweak is this fact that he seems to be worshipping the others, and I think we should probably take our lead from Jeor Mormont on this, and Benjen and all the rest of it. They didn't really see this as being anything special. They didn't think this was important, or there are plenty of wildlings, as we spoke about earlier, who also seem to worship the Cold Ones or something like that. Yes, they think it's distasteful. Yes, they don't like it one little bit, but they don't think that, for one moment, they don't think that he's doing anything particularly special. Turns out that he is. He's leaving out his babies there, and the others are taking them away. Does that mean that he has to be particularly magical? No. Just means that he's leaving out his babies and the others are taking them away, and over time that some kind of understanding had developed. Does he know how to communicate with them? I don't think he's got this sort of ongoing, I don't sort of come by for a chat or anything like that. I think perhaps there's a sort of an implicit understanding of what's going on, that he's making the sacrifice in order to, he's effectively treating them like a god. He's giving them a sacrifice so that they will leave him alone, which they do. That's the deal, and that's what happens. When you say, is it coincidence that he then sends the Black Brothers onto the Fist where the others are attacking? I think it probably is. He doesn't say, hey, you must go off to this place. They go to him for information, and they say, have you seen Benjen? He said, nope. And they say, what about Mance Raider? What's going on? And he said, well, I could show you where he is if you want. But he doesn't like him particularly. So he's not, I think, trying to send the Black Brothers, the Night's Watch, to their deaths as a sacrifice to the others. That doesn't seem to be the relationship he's got going on there. I think that he sees them as a way of getting stuff. He's exchanging information. He effectively draws them a map of where to go in exchange for an axe. He wants an axe. And I think that this is just that if he gets rid of the Night's Watch, then he loses his way of getting all the things that he likes. He has a taste for southern wine that he can't get north of the wall. So that's another thing that he can get from the Night's Watch. He's actually not wanting to get rid of the Night's Watch. He quite happy. He enjoys his life as it is. Googly Woogly says, I find Val to be an interesting character of some importance. Why did Stannis treat her as a princess, even though he believes that he is the one true king? Why did he offer Winterfell and Val to Jon? Is Val even Dalla's real sister, or just someone Mance wanted to protect? Any insight to Val would be appreciated. And Eric Fogg has a related question. If Jon goes north at the end of the book, does Val go with him as Queen Beyond the Wall? Well, Val is an interesting character. We mentioned her already. She is Dalla's sister now. Is she really Dalla's sister? Dalla being the mother of Mance Rayder's child. Is she really? Well, all the Wildlings seem to believe it, and there's absolutely no reason why they would be lying about that. She does seem to be the who she claims to be. There doesn't seem to be a huge mystery there. The reason why Stannis treated her like a princess, I think, is purely this is a lack of cultural understanding. So Stannis, he simply does not understand this idea that the Northerners don't have kings and they don't bow to people and all the rest of it. But he also, Stannis is a bit of a stickler for rules, as we know. He claims to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms, which ends at the Wall. Maybe some point he might want to conquer further, but at the moment he claims that his rule goes up as far as the Wall. Beyond that, that's other lands. That's the king beyond the Wall is in charge of there. So he treats Val effectively as if she is a princess of a foreign country. That is what he's doing. That is his lack of cultural understanding of who she is, because the Wildlings, the free folk, they don't treat her like a princess. They treat her as if she's, Dalla's sister, and they respect her for who she is without giving her a particular title. So Stannis then goes off on a whole variety of other random thoughts on once he's decided yes, she's effectively a foreign princess. Then when he's offering Winterfell to Jon, he sort of says, and you can marry Val. He's thinking he's offering her as a sort of a powerful bride. It's not the case. That's not how the Wildlings would see it at all, but that's how Stannis saw it. And a lot of the other people in Stannis' army, Justin Massey, for example, and a few others, all see this as a chance for them to gain some power by marrying Val, added to which she clearly is a very charismatic and beautiful woman, and obviously they like that as well, but she is seen as being a politically important person in a way that the Wildlings, the free folk, simply don't get or understand. So that, I think, is what it is. It's we only ever see her through the eyes of people who are Southerners, not through the eyes of the free folk. She is not a princess. She is a member of the free folk. She's a very powerful and important one that lots of people respect, but she's not a princess. And the question from Eric Fogg, does she go north with Jon at the end as queen? I mean, probably not. For the simple reason that I think that Jon and Daenerys will meet and fall in love, and I think that it will end tragically, not in exactly the same way as on the show, but Jon will end up being heartbroken at the end of it, and probably with blood on his sword. So I think that he is not wanting to be remarrying. What would be the point of marrying Val? It's not for power or anything. That wouldn't make him the king beyond the wall. The king beyond the wall is somebody that people follow because they want to follow, not because they've married a princess from the north. So that's there's no political advantage for it, and I don't think that he's going to be in a place of falling in love with somebody new at that point either. So I think the answer probably is no. Mara Lee asks about Mance Rayder and what his role is going to be in the last 2 books, and also who his spear wives are. So Mance is the king beyond the wall. Everybody thinks that he's been killed by Melisandre, but actually that's a sneaky trick, and she sends him off to Winterfell to do this infiltration work with 6 spear wives. Now, again, I think that we quite often think of spear wives as being, are these Mance's wives? Has he got like some sort of harem going on? No, that's not what this is. These are 6 warriors. They happen to be female warriors. That is all that's going on there. And they go with him, and I don't think that they're not exactly red shirts, but I don't think they're specifically important people in and of themselves. They are just good warriors who have a big degree of discretion about them. There's a hint of what Ned did going to the Tower of Joy. He handpicked some people that he trusted to go with him. Again, 6 people to go with him. In terms of what his role is going forward, I think he, having infiltrated Winterfell, he effectively masterminded Theon's escape with Jane Poole, who everybody thinks is Arya, and now he is almost certainly going to be hiding in the Winterfell crypts. Now, I think his role is the fact that he is then going to be the person. He will probably stay down there for quite some time. He will discover things in the Winterfell crypts. I suspect that's what's going on. In particular, I think that he will be the person who manages to work his way through the most mysterious part of the crypts, which is the bit which there's been a cave in, because they're wonderfully built crypts. We never hear of any other bits of falling masonry or stones on the floor that people trip over or anything like that. That seems to be in great condition, except for one bit, the oldest bit, which there's been a cave in. I think that he's going to work his way past that, and he will discover what's in the oldest part of the crypt. So I think that is his role going forward. Maybe he will survive through to be fighting the others as well, but I think that is his main role, is discovering what's going on down in the crypts. Diego Godoy saying, what do you think is actually going on with 1-1? What set him off? Was someone doing it purposefully? Is it related to a plot by the mutineers or to Mance's machinations? I don't think it's Mance's machinations. So in terms of 1-1, for those who need a reminder on the exact circumstances of Jon's assassination in the books. So the pink letter arrives. Jon gets it, changes all of his plans, decides that he's going to go down to Winterfell, abandon the Night's Watch. Some of the Night's Watch are up in arms about this. This is a man who's now breaking. He's supposed to be the Lord Commander, but he's breaking every kind of rule that he's supposed to have. He's supposed to have abandoned all of his past affiliations, and now he's going off to Winterfell just because he's got a bit angry about stuff. So they decide to get rid of him. He goes outside because 1-1, the giant, you hear a roar, and then he kills Sir Patrick, who's a soldier that we have in Stannis' army. Now, 1-1 seems to have gone mad about something. So after that, Jon tries to sort of coordinate people calming down 1-1, but that's the point at which he gets assassinated. So we don't see what aggravated 1-1, but we have 2 clues. The first clue is the fact that 1-1 and Sir Patrick have had a run-in is probably the wrong way of saying it, but earlier on, Patchface did a sort of a twirly, twisty thing, and 1-1 burst out laughing, at which point Sir Patrick suddenly drew his sword, which seems like a really odd response, but obviously he is very wary of 1-1. So the clue is that perhaps as Sir Patrick is there, 1-1 did something that made Sir Patrick launch into this default reaction, and maybe he hurt 1-1, and 1-1 went wild because somebody attacked him, and he then killed Sir Patrick. So that's the first clue we have. The second clue is that although there doesn't seem to be a hugely detailed and subtle plot for killing Jon, the people who kill Jon are all there at the same time saying the same thing, which implies that there is some degree of planning. And the plan seems to be get him outside, then kill him. Whatever got 1-1 all excited, it does seem to imply that this was the plotters who somehow managed to manipulate it 1-1 into getting Jon outside. So that seems to, those are the clues we have about what's going on. Incidentally, 1-1 killing Sir Patrick is a and feel free to Google this, because this is an American football reference that is beyond me, I'm afraid. But this is actually a bet between George R. R. Martin and his friend, who I think has the first name of Patrick. And the bet was, George R. R. Martin would kill Sir Patrick with 1-1, and 1-1 is the number 11. 1-1 is the number of an American footballer on whichever American football team George R. R. Martin supports. As I say, the details of it are beyond me, but it's one of those interesting little Easter eggs if you like that kind of stuff. Future stuff. We've talked about the culture of the wildlings, of the free folk. We've talked about a few of the individual characters. Let's start thinking about the future. What might be the future for them? Yes, so the chat is now trying to work out what this American football thing is all about. But the Giants, George R. Martin is a fan of the Giants, so there you go. That makes sense, 1-1 being a giant. Jake Grice. Hi, Robert. I've been wondering about the wildlings that are now in Bravos after their enslavement, and as to what, if any, their impact might be on the story. I can't fully remember what happened to them. They are in a completely alien culture, and it'll be fascinating to see how both themselves and the Bravosi deal with their presence and the stories of the others returning. I also just want to add, I'd love to see you cover the Velaryons at some point, as well, as they are a house I know little about despite their long history. Well, on the Velaryons, that was the other option actually I put to my my patrons. And normally when I put a few things, I do a little vote for my $10 plus patrons about what to do next. Normally it's quite clear, there's a clear winner out of it. This time it was very close between doing something on the Wildlings and the Velaryons. So I think what I will do is the Velaryons next, because so quite a lot of my patrons were wanting that. So next week, House Velaryon. In terms of the Wildlings in Bravos, now this is an intriguing little subplot which may turn into nothing, or it may have quite a big impact. The Wildlings, as we said, after the battle beneath the wall, they went all over the place, spread out in lots of different directions. A lot of them went over to Hardhome. Now, a lot of the cities, the free cities towards the southwest of Essos, send out slaving ships to go and try and grab slaves from various places. Now, one such slaving ship, I think it was a Lysini one, but I might not be right on that one, went as far as Hardhome, where there are now lots of wildlings, grabbed a whole load of wildlings and started heading back, where they got intercepted by the Bravosi. Now, the Bravos is dead set against slavery in all its forms, so they grabbed the slaving ship, and then the wildlings, the free folk, were brought to Bravos. that's really as far as that story has got. We've got no further details about it at all. So it's possible that this is just a little bit of extra information going on around the side. This is one of the things that Aya, as one of her tasks for the Faceless Men, is sent to be gathering information from the ports, and this is one of the bits of information that she comes back with. So it might just be an extra little bit of world building that George R. R. Martin's got out there. But if the free folk are convincing that their others are returned, and they manage to convince Braavos of this, Braavos is not just a cool city across the water. This is potentially the greatest sea power, or definitely the greatest sea power in the known world. They can create a huge naval ship every day in their arsenal. Their technology is greater than anywhere else. They can create a huge fleet in just a matter of a few months. And if they decide that they want to embark on some sort of war, join a side, then that would be quite a significant addition to what's going on. It's very likely that they will start doing something. There is clearly some kind of political maneuvering going on. We see it in the Aya chapters, just sort of maneuverings that probably there's going to be a change of Sea Lord, which will mean a change of policy for Braavos, which means that they might well do different things. They've been sitting back all the way through this, largely, apart from the work of the Iron Bank, who are deciding who it is that they're going to support. And obviously the Faceless Men are off doing their own plotting. But corporately, the city has not got involved, but they could get involved. So, and it would be significant if they did. They also have 2 invasions happening, and they will care about the fact that Daenerys has got dragons, because they are very aware of how game-changing dragons are. They paid huge amounts back in the day. They paid huge amounts to buy some dragon eggs, effectively, because they wanted to also have dragons, because that would be a way of protecting themselves. Because when somebody has dragons, their power is hugely diminished. So Braavos will re-enter, or will enter, this huge conflict that is going to be happening, multifaceted conflict. The question is on which side, and this, the Wildlings who are in Braavos giving them this extra information is just one of the many factors which will feed into who they're going to be supporting. So that's where it's entirely possible that this won't lead anywhere. It's just a little bit of world building, but that is the likely thing, that, or the intriguing possibility that they bring with it. Mrs. Castle Dreams 617 says, "Hi Robert, hope you had a nice holiday. Thank you. I was wondering if the Free Folk will remain south of the Wall at the end of A Dream of Spring. I know the show had them going back beyond the Wall. However, I find it likely that some might stay and incorporate into the North Kingdom. Unfortunately, I think the North will lose a large amount of its people, so I thought how in Fire and Blood we saw the Northmen marry into the Riverlands after the war, we could see the same with the Free Folk." Yeah, I think we will see them splinter off into lots of different places. The Gift is the strip of land. It's not that strip, it's miles deep, just south of the Wall, that does not belong to the North. It's not under Winterfell's control. It belongs to the Wall. So it is within the gift of the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch to be telling people that they can settle there. So that is exactly what's happened. Jon has offered them lands there, and some may well decide to stay there and settle. I don't think that they would want to go further south to be kneeling to whoever's king or queen at the time. That doesn't seem to be a likely outcome for them, but I could certainly see, whereas again, George R. R. Martin loves his ironies, for the Gift, which was there intended to be a way of supporting the North, keeping the Wildlings out, now turning into an extra bit of land for the Wildlings is a bit of irony that I think that he would enjoy. So yes, I think it's possible that some will. Others, however, I suspect after it's all happened will want to return north because that's their home, and why not? Mara Lee saying in season 8, the final episode, Jon is back at the wall and we see him, Tormund and Ghost leading the free folk beyond the wall back to their old way of life and freedom. Do you see this kind of ending for Jon and Ghost when all is said and done and we finally close the last chapter of Dream of Spring? Yes, I do. I don't know whether Tormund's going to be there along with this, but Eric Fogg, I think you also asked, you said it didn't make complete sense to you why Jon would do this. So I will give you my understanding of why this, for me, makes thematic sense. I've said before that, to use a Lord of the Rings allusion, George R. R. Martin is writing Jon Snow as if he were Aragorn, the promised king and all the rest of it, but in reality he's Frodo, the flawed character who will, through his actions, bring about an end to the conflict, but it will break him. George R. R. Martin when he describes the end of A Song of Ice and Fire, when he talks about the field, when he talks about bittersweet, the one character he sort of mentions specifically is Frodo. He says, think about Lord of the Rings, bittersweet. Frodo is broken by everything that happens to him. He can't live to enjoy what has happened to him. That is what I mean by bittersweet. So he wants us to have this idea of Frodo in our heads when we're thinking of bittersweet. He loves this idea of the character who is broken by what they have done. They are perhaps the most pivotal character in saving the world, but they cannot enjoy the newly saved world. And so what does Frodo do? Well, yes, he lingers for a little bit, but he sails off west. He leaves Middle-earth. He cannot stay in Middle-earth to enjoy it. Jon, if anything happens even close to what it happened on the show, if he ends up killing Daenerys, which I personally suspect he will, then I could certainly see him, and he discovers, that the person who raised him wasn't actually his father. All of these things about his past unravel. I could certainly see him being broken by this. And in the same way that Frodo had to leave Middle-earth because he could not enjoy the victory that he had helped secure, Jon will feel he has to leave the Seven Kingdoms because he cannot enjoy the victory that he helped secure. But whereas for Frodo, it was heading west, for Jon, it will be heading north. So I think that makes perfect sense, this sort of movement beyond the wall, beyond the Seven Kingdoms, striking out with Ghost. As I said, Tormund, I don't know, he may or may not be there, but that feel of him heading out and leaving, and if George R. R. Martin's going to go for the full ending of this, then Sam will be there saying farewell and then returning back to Gilly and baby Sam. I think that would be a perfect rounding off for that if he is going to go for an homage, and I think he must do. He loves Lord of the Rings so much, he has to do some small homage to the Lord of the Rings in all of this. So yes, that's the short answer. That's my reasoning why I think that Jon will. I think he will survive, but I think he'll be broken by it. So we have got 3 more questions from my patrons. So now is a good time to drop any more questions in the chat. I'll try and answer as many questions from the chat as I can, but I've got some more questions from my patrons. Diego Godoy saying, "Hola, Robert. Hola. My question this week is, how do you think Bloodraven got possession of the famous horn that was left for Ghost to find? Could it be that one of the Wildlings had it and gave it to him? Thanks." Right. So this is fantastic question. In the cache, so Ghost finds this cache of dragonglass with a horn in it. Now, the horn, I believe, many others believe, is the Horn of Winter, but it's not. It's not working. We're specifically told that it is broken, but Sam keeps hold of it. He takes it with him all the way down to Old Town. Sam sells all of his possessions, we're told, except the clothes on his back and this old horn. So, and we're reminded that he has it again and again and again. It will be important. But if we accept, as I think we must, that this is Bloodraven having put this cache of stuff there, the dragonglass and the Horn of Winter, got Ghost to lead John there, and then they can use it. If we accept that, then we have to say, well, where did he get this from? The dragonglass, fine. There are children of the forest around. They use dragonglass all the time. But what about the Horn of Winter? Now, I don't know yet. There could be many different ways how he could have found it. Maybe the children of the forest had it in that cave for millennia. Maybe he sent out someone like Cold Hands to dig up. Maybe Mance was right, and it was hidden in a grave of some great hero. Maybe he got Cold Hands to go and dig it up. We don't know. My speculation is that I think that Bran the Breaker, who was the King of Winter at the time, he has to have broken something. Now, yes, maybe he broke his word or broke a trust or all the rest of it, but we have the Horn of Winter that we are specifically told is broken. So for me, it makes sense that that is broken. And I do wonder whether when it's said to be broken, it was actually literally broken in two. Maybe this was such a powerful and magical weapon that it was decided this should not be lightly blown and used again. Maybe we need to have both parts kept separate. Maybe one should be north of the wall, one should be south of the wall. We defeated the others this time with the King Beyond the Wall and the King of Winter, north and south of the wall, working together. Maybe we should have this powerful weapon and we each keep half of it. My speculation is that the other half of it is in that bit of the crypt right down at the bottom, hidden away. I think that Mance Rayder will find it. He was searching for the Horn of Winter all this time. It would again be this wonderful irony of when he's not looking for it, he does find it. But this bit, the bit that Sam gets that Bloodraven had before him, this is the bit which was north of the wall. As I say, I call it speculation. Some might call it tinfoil. Personally, I think this is an educated guess based upon the language clues that we are given about this being a broken horn, about the fact that Mance Rayder is hunting for this all the time. So wouldn't it be wonderful if he finally found it? The fact that it was used to defeat the others the first time around by both the Wildlings and the Starks, and that will happen again. So I think that this echoes all well. I've done videos on this if you're interested, but that's just my personal take. Ali Cat saying, in the books, Quaith. So we're moving slightly beyond the Wildlings and the Free Folk here, but please do drop some questions about that into the chat. Ali Cat says, in the books, Quaith says that dragons are causing the return of magic. However, we know that direwolves have, for the first time in hundreds of years, journeyed from beyond the wall and have been found south near Winterfell. We also know from the prologue that the others have also returned and ventured south. This happened before the magical rebirth of the dragons. Do you think that the events at Summerhall could be the cause of the old magic awakening beyond the wall? Fantastic. This is again a time for great speculation. Clearly, when Daenerys brought the dragons to life, that did help magic across the entire country. We see examples of this all over the place. We get told the pyromancers in King's Landing say, hey, suddenly we're able to do a whole lot more than we used to be able to do. Quaithe points out a fire magic person over in Essos in Karth, who a year ago could hardly do any magic at all, but now is performing these mighty feats. It seems that Daenerys bringing the dragons to life, this has created a boost for the magical undercurrent across Westeros, and in particular for fire type magic. That seems to be what's been going on there. The non-fire magic, though, the magic of the old gods, the Weirwood network, that's never stopped working. That has always been there. The Weirwoods networks worked. We have Bloodraven talking to Bran, Bloodraven doing stuff through the Weirwood network well before this. That was completely unaffected by what's going on there. So that kind of magic is not part of what was going on with Daenerys' birth. This, I think, is then another thing. You're quite right. The others have been around for a little while. It wasn't the birth of the dragons. It wasn't the anything that is going on with Bloodraven and all of that, because and the magic of the old gods and the Children of the Forest, because that seems to have been carrying on regardless. Something else brought back the others, and there are many possibilities of what there is. I love the idea that, yes, as you say, this was something that happened at Summerhall. At Summerhall, magic was done, big magic was done. We know that was the intention. Egg got magic users in, they performed magic. It did not go to plan. That is what we know. That's the timing seems to work quite well. We have no actual link, is the honest answer. We can't, we if we were to go any further, then we would be heading into the realms of tinfoil, but the timing seems about right, and clearly something has to have happened. There are magic is involved. We also have sacrifice of 3 good men. We're told, being Egg, King Aegon V, his heir being Duncan Targaryen, and also Duncan the Tall, who, although he is not of King's blood, when you dig into Duncan the Tall and you actually go, well, if you can't have King's blood, well, how about somebody who had an heir to the throne die for him, and who saved the life of a future king many, many times, and who had an heir to the throne named after him? He is probably about as close as you're going to get. So you have sacrifice of King's blood happening down there. Something hugely powerful and significant definitely happened at Summerhall. Whether that was the thing that woke the others, who knows? We simply do not have the information yet. I hope we might get a little bit more in the Winds of Winter about what sparked them. Why they're coming back now is one of the big mysteries in A Song of Ice and Fire. Jake Grice saying, dropping in late but looking forward to the catch-up. Glad to have you back, Robert. Thank you so much. I answered your question earlier, Jake, so please do flick back for that if you missed it. And one more random question from my patrons. Susan Dunkel saying, welcome back, Robert. Will you be watching Raised by Wolves? I would love for you to follow that new show by Ridley Scott. Yes, so for those who don't know, this is it looks fascinating. It's a science fiction show. It's on HBO. I think it's live now, as in today. I'm not entirely sure what their release schedule is, whether they're doing it on a weekly thing or just sort of dropping it all now. I'm not 100% sure. But as a setup, yes, Ridley Scott is involved. He's not the showrunner, but he's an executive producer, and he directed the first 2 episodes. I'm huge Ridley Scott fan. I'm sure many of us are. So his involvement is clearly important, and he does do good sci-fi. The idea behind it is a fascinating one. That it's and this is no spoilers here. I've not watched it. This is simply the stuff pre-publicity they've been telling us. But it's set in the future. A war happened on the Earth, and a sort of a shuttle was sent off with some survivors, and 2 androids are set up to be raising these children, the survivor children, on this alien hostile planet. And it's how do the idea sort of spring out from that. Are old hostilities renewed just when you take people to a completely different place? How do you actually ethically bring people up who should understand what their background and history is, but at the same time, in order for humanity to survive, they need to move beyond it? So these are really interesting sort of concepts that are being played with. So I will definitely be watching it. I don't have any plans to cover it, but I do sometimes. If I get very excited, The Witcher last year, I had no plans to cover that, but I watched it, loved it, and did a few videos on it. So yeah, maybe I will, but I at the moment have no plans to. So those are my questions from my patrons. Arcanix1971 saying, I believe 3 episodes were released. Okay, so that's where they're at. Let's have a quick flick through, see if there's any other questions. Shannon T saying, serious question, did you ever find the huge scary spider from a few weeks ago? There was apparently, for those who don't know, somewhere up here on the curtains there was a huge scary spider, which I completely missed. No, I didn't, is the short answer. So maybe there's going to be many other baby spiders turning into huge scary spiders in the future. What a happy thought. Sasak saying, any thoughts on what will happen with the new House Then? Thought I'd throw this out there since I didn't submit anything on Patreon. Yeah, so House Then, the Thens are one of the free folk clans, cultures, probably the biggest. Alice Carstock has arrived up in Castle Black and is married off to effectively the heir of the biggest, most powerful member of House Then, to create a new House Then. So they were the Thens and they are now House Then. I don't, in terms of the future for that, it's a little bit vague. We don't know, but this is clearly an attempt to draw some of the wildlings, some of the free folk into the culture of the South. So if I had to pick any of the groups in the free folk who would then decamp down to the South, then perhaps that would be them. Perhaps they will set up a new house somewhere in the Gift. That would make a huge amount of sense to me. Perhaps that is where that's going to be going. Just have a quick flick through. So Andrew Case talking about any of the magical hinge points like the wall and other sites over Planetos will heighten magic. The wall is just one of the most powerful examples. Yeah, so that it does seem so. The wall is Melisandre. Again, we have to always take what Melisandre says with a pinch of salt, because she gets a lot of stuff wrong, but we take a lot of what she says as absolute gospel. We probably can believe her when she says that her magic appears stronger at the wall. She calls it a hinge point in the world. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think one of the governing principles, and at some point, I've said this randomly a few times in the past, at some point I will try and pull together sort of a grand thesis of how magic works in Planetos, in the world of Ice and Fire. But one of the principles appears to be that if you have some magic, then that helps bolster more magic. When there's not much magic around, then the rest of the magic is also dampened. There's a sort of an underlying magic effect which if there's more of it, then that helps even more to happen. And at the wall, that seems to bolster things. So when Dany's dragons came in, that was the sort of the push to create more magic, because more magic was suddenly out there that would allows more magic to be going on. So that's the sort of the thesis. The wall is a magical thing across the length of it, because it's a magical barrier first and foremost, rather than a physical barrier. And that helps to bolster Melisandre's magic. Okay, I think that is probably all. So yeah, Andrew K also talked about the comet, likely the cause of the uptick in magic and magical entities feeding off one another in a cascading effect. So the other element of this to add in terms of the return of magic, so the comet, magic comes from above. This is quite a staple from across a lot of the fantasy worlds, but magic comes from above. When you get a lot of the magical things are meteors that come down onto the earth, that is a source of a huge amounts of magic. And the red comet that we saw in book 1, that was seen as the herald of things happening, and indeed that was part of this perfect confluence of things that allowed Daenerys to hatch those dragon eggs. The fact that there was that red comet, she sees the red comet and then she goes off and does it. So yes, that is another aspect of that, bringing the magic. Once there is some magic going on, more magic can happen. Okay, I think with that, I'm going to start drawing this one to a close. Next week, we're going to be looking at House Velaryon. So obviously, if you've got any questions for that, if you're a patron, I will give you a chance to sort of put those questions up a day or so in advance. If you are interested in becoming a patron, either for that or for any of the other benefits, then there will be up here-ish a link appearing any moment. If you want to watch more live streams like this, then there will be a link appearing somewhere around here. Okay, that's all for this time. Take care, everyone, and I will see you soon.